Hey Carl, very nice to meet you again.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, nice to meet you too.
I really appreciate you making time for this. Before we kick things off, would you mind giving us a little bit of context to who you are and then, of course, AI assistant, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, well, firstly, thanks, Fabian, for organising this. Hopefully, it'll be useful for others to listen to. So, a bit of background. If I do the background of me first, is that useful?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Well, I suppose the journey for me started when I was 11 years old, which is an awfully long time ago. It feels like now. That was when I wrote my first code on a ZX81, for those of an older generation might remember that. And from that, I was fixated on anything code related or systems related. And then I kind of left it alone till I was much older. I joined an automotive business for working for Gowring's Ford, as it was at the time, so Ford retail business. And I spent 7 years working as an after sales director and ended up running one of the North London regions for Ford. I was part of a pet project on can you bring people into the industry who hadn't previously sort of grown up in the industry as such, and could I apply knowledge and skills and systems to bring automotive into a different era? And, I learned an awful lot in a very short period of time, frankly. And all throughout that journey, I kept thinking back to systems and, how can you bring better process through management of systems and computer programs and stuff? And going back in those days, they were pretty awful, frankly, some of the systems that we had. And after about 7 years, I decided that having built some stuff in those businesses, that I could go and found my own company and start on that journey. And that was 23 years ago. And since then, I've been involved in four automotive software businesses and exited three of those successfully over that period of time. I've been co-founder or founder of all of those along the way. So kind of been involved, I would say automotive's in my blood, forcefully injected, I suspect,
Hmm.
and overlaid that with systems. And that's where I found myself today as co-founder of AI Assistant.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much for the overview. Absolutely fascinating. And I could imagine that, the automotive industry, especially over the past 20 odd years with all of the technological change has shifted a lot and provided loads of different opportunities. Which lead me to the next question about AI assistant. What specifically do you do? What sparked your journey with AI assistant, and who do you work with as of right now?
So what sparked it? We started off wanting to solve a problem that related to communicating with customers. I just exited another business at the time, and me and a couple of colleagues, other founders of the business, were looking to see if we could solve a problem of scaling communication to customers. One of the inherent issues I think for anyone in the industry can recognize is keeping up with what customer demands are, and doing that in an efficient way is very difficult to do in the business, notwithstanding the fact it's quite an expensive thing to do as well. So we set about at the time to see if we could do that and solve that problem using basically machine learning libraries. And can we do this in a way that could sort of sequentially move opportunities through a business? And that's what started the journey. And boy, didn't realize at the time how complicated that would be, and some of the things we'd uncover along the way.
And what specifically are you offering at the moment, and who do you work with?
So we offer effectively a hands-off solution. So the product basically communicates with customers through email and soon to be WhatsApp and SMS. And we talk to consumers on behalf of car dealerships and groups to see if they're interested in buying products and services. Like, you're interested in your car being serviced, or you're interested in buying a car, or you're coming in for the service department. Are you interested in changing your car? So basically a series of about 30 different conversations we have
Hmm.
with consumers, all done through AI with a complete hands-off model. So we don't need humans involved in the process. And that was our ultimate goal. Could we do that? And could we effectively make money for dealers that they ordinarily may not have been able to get to?
When we spoke a couple of couple of weeks ago, you described to me how this wasn't as it may have looked like from the outset, this sort of straight line that led you to your product as it is right now, but it was a somewhat volatile journey with loads of lessons learned, some pivots along the way. What were some of the key decision points and lessons learned along the way that led you to your solution as it is right now?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily. I think the goal of what we were trying to achieve has remained pretty constant throughout. I'd say it was more of a refinement.
Okay.
The goal was initial goal actually was to be able to reply, respond, and communicate with 95% of consumers with no human interaction, such that you could satisfy their need to the point that you could pass it back to the business in a form that they could deal with. So the original goal was 95%. The first tools that we used, which are very heavily machine learning based, so we'd had to build our own, our own business logic on top of that to be able to orchestrate that. It was very heavy on code, but we couldn't get the results above 50%. One of the challenges when you're doing this is if you can't be confident that the solution's going to deliver the result, you always have humans alongside it. And what we decided was at the time, we have to keep refining the solution and finding new ways to do it such that you could get beyond 95% accuracy. That was a series of refinements. So we kind of had to go, well, this isn't working. So version 1 was frankly terrible. You wouldn't leave it alone for 5 minutes, frankly. Version 2 became, you could see the light that was at the end of the tunnel, that if you kept working at what you were doing, it kind of felt a little bit like you could achieve the result that we set out to achieve. What we didn't realize at the end of the tunnel was a train coming the other way. So then we had to go to version 3, which was, the combination of learnings from 1 and 2. And at the time, we were sort of fortunate some of the tools and some of the things that we were trying to deliver in the industry had evolved. It came together pretty well at the time. And version 3, we actually now get to more than 99% accuracy on dealing with all interactions with consumers in a hands-off way. But to get to that, we had to have gone through the learnings. In some ways, it's kind of, you have to learn what not to do before you sometimes get to what you have to do to know for sure that you're on the right path. So it's not necessarily pivots, but more a determination that you will achieve the goal. You just have to find a way to achieve it.
Yeah, just on that, and to contextualize this a little bit more, how did you enter the market and who did you involve to refine your solution from both your side and then, I presume, customers and the dealership/retailer side?
Well, having delivered automotive solutions to, certainly in the UK, but Middle East as well, fairly extensively, and into mainland Europe for 22 years prior to that, you kind of collect up a lot of knowledge of people, process, contacts, opportunities, and reputation. So, when we go to our clients and say, we think we'd like to do this with you, you get a very welcome response because we have a track record of having delivered these sort of things before, or certainly informational software in some of those businesses. So we were kind of blessed in that way that we had an opportunity to work with some really great customers. And, if you hang around in the industry as long as I have, you get to know a lot of people. As long as you're honest and faithful and trustworthy to the industry, then you could do really well, I think, in it. And we were also blessed to know the team at Keyloop really well, having sold a business previously to them. So, there was a lot of, if you like, groundwork that had gone into this point for, decades before. So it wasn't as easy as just pitching up and laying out your stall, as it were.
You mentioned Keyloop there. What is the relationship with Keyloop? How did it evolve? And what role do they play now?
We're quite lucky with, having, like I say, I think a good reputation with them. We were able to appoint them as a reseller quite early on in the process. So they're authorized reseller throughout Europe, Middle East, and UK for our solutions. So, which works really well for them, and it works well for us because, we get routes to market and they get the ability to talk to clients about new initiatives and new products. So, it's been quite a useful journey for us. And there's a really good synergy between the two companies. We do work really closely with them, which is it's good for us and it's good for them.
Yeah, no, super interesting. On this point of distribution and sales and marketing, one of the sort of challenges that I've personally faced when I've delivered solution in a related space was always around ROI, demonstrating, creating a clear value case for it. I was just wondering how you approach this subject. You're of course very much more experienced than I am in the space, but how do you approach conversations with possible customers to adopt your solution?
Yeah. Okay. So, I have to go back like 2 decades. We used
It's fine.
to,
We've got time.
we built a really good, I would say so. We built a really good after sales solution. Something that even now, the functionality that we were delivering sort of, 15 years ago or plus, some businesses still haven't got to today. So, it was a great product, really loyal base. And what we were selling at the time was an efficiency-based model. Like if you use our software, you can be more efficient. If you use our software well and we built all this functionality and beautiful interfaces and things, then maybe you'll need less service advisors, or maybe you'll need less controllers, and that principle of efficiency is a very hard sell. It's a faith-based sell. So someone has to say, I see your product, I can see how that might happen. I'll go with you. But you're also very hard to measure. And throughout the years, I'd sort of reached the conclusion, if you want to have a frictionless sell into any business, you've got to offer value. And that value needs to be demonstrable. By value, I mean, if you can say and this isn't about AI assistant particularly, but if you can measure the effect of your software or solution that's favorable to a business, and it doesn't matter what business it is. That's the curious part of it. It doesn't have to be automotive. But if you can if you can create a situation where you can demonstrate in financial terms the return on investment, and that you've engineered it in a way that's frictionless for them, so they don't have to put loads of effort into it, and that you can demonstrate the return on investment to be, in our case, it costs you 1 month to generate. So your return on investment effectively is in the first month of a 12-month contract. And it's very hard for a business to say, I don't want it. So being able to demonstrate it and say, if you spend £1,000, let's say, I'll generate you 1 million. And if you can demonstrate that, it's very hard to say no to it. And if you can then say, and you don't need to do anything, you get the double whammy. And I think this is where AI, particularly in the current environment, is so valuable, is that if you can demonstrate it, the best solutions often don't involve humans. And that process means that it's a much less friction to get in the business. You don't have to worry about change controls and, I'm taking out system A to put system B in. And that's a really good way of demonstrating return on investment. And if you can do that in a month, if you can show someone your return on investment is 4 weeks, then it's a very compelling story.
How do you approach this in the first place? Do you need, let's say, case studies from other retailers to have this sort of conversation, or how do you? Okay.
Yeah, it's it's been a big part of our business that we celebrate with our customers their wins. We do find, and this is, I think, true of most technology adoption cycles, is that you need people that that trust your judgment in the early days. And it's really important that you work through some of the obstacles that will appear. Let's be clear, in the first phases, version 1 and 2, we were working with our clients, and it clearly, although it didn't kind of matter to them too much because it was costing us money, not them, it is important that you find those customers who are willing to break the mold with you. And at some point you cross the chasm and you become, it's a decision easily made by a dealer or dealer group because there's a previous history and reference points to go back to. So we do reference heavily the technology adoption cycle strategically. That it's not by happenstance. We don't hope that we'll achieve it. We plan to go through the stages of early adopters and early majority. That was always part of our philosophy.
And then sort of building on the point of around AI, there's of course loads of movement in the market at the moment as relates to technological possibilities, especially at the customer front end, different customer touch points. There seems to be a lot of movement at the moment around use of different data assets, building underlying data products, and then using some of the latest and greatest LLMs to create more personalized, streamlined omni-channel experiences. I was just wondering how you expect your product to change as far as you can talk about it or would like to talk about it. And then secondly, just a very open and honest question, if you're worried that some of the sort of even larger players in the space may sort of expand their offering, and how you intend to compete with them if that's the case.
Yeah, well, it's if I do that in reverse, so the first thing is speed to market with these things is really important.
Mm.
I kind of go back again to my journey over the last 20 years. We do more now. We achieve more in terms of outcomes now than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So, back in the day, we'd have 100 devs in one business that I was co-founder in. And I think we probably are able to do more than they achieved with probably 1/10 of that resource. So, and we do that because we use AI within our own business. And I'll come on to explain a little bit about why that's important. So agility, and I mean true agility. I don't mean in the sense of, I have a process of agility. I mean, can you get it out to market? How rapid can you do it? And how can you ensure it's of high quality and accurate in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of people? And I think there's many people that are sort of hypothesizing now that it won't be long before the next $1 billion business will be one individual. So, taking the principles of agility, best processes, no process, make sure the product is compelling, beautiful, and desirable. It's very hard for businesses to keep up with that, larger businesses, that is, because our agility is something that can't be matched easily. That's not to say we won't suffer that as we grow, but we're very mindful that agility is our strength. And in addition to that, we have in our senior team, more than 100 years of experience in auto. So we short circuit a lot of things as well. Sorry, I forgot, what was the other question?
So yeah, this was around competition, and then sort of building on that almost from a technological standpoint. What do you assume are the implications of some of these technological developments for your product with regards to some of the latest Gen AI developments?
Yeah, so the AI generally is, I do get a little bit frustrated with some of this, having been through this painful journey, I will say. It almost sometimes feels like AI for the sake of AI. Like, I've got a problem, let's go solve it with AI. You kind of go, well, should it be solved? Can it be solved? What's your approach? How are you going to orchestrate this? What data do you have? It can't just be that a human copy and paste something into ChatGPT to do something. It's not sustainable in that way. So we laid a foundation, and I don't mind sharing it. I think one of the things that we really didn't see coming, but it's become so evident that it's frightening. And that was that the more we do, the more we're expected to do, the more we do. And you end up in this cycle and I'll give you some examples of that. Very early on, we didn't plan to have a customer complaint management module within AI. But here's what happens. For legitimate reasons, we talk to a consumer, say, hey, you interested in buying a car? You're coming into the service department next week. And they open up about how unhappy they are. So you have two choices. How do I solve that problem? And all we've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years is solving those types of problems. So, of course, you then develop the solution to be able to be empathetic, to be able to understand how the business's complaints procedures work. And before you know it, you're finding that people in the business are getting our virtual assistants to talk to the client. And the client, when they're unhappy, come back to the virtual assistant because it answers, it's efficient, it does what it says it's going to do, it follows up when it should do it. If it promises something, it delivers it. And as humans, we want to go to the path of least resistance. So in that process, we'll go back to the person or the system that's going to give us the most likelihood of success. So when you face into that, before you know it, you're doing more and more, not because we designed it that way, not because we wanted to do all these different things, but simply because it dictates the more you do, the more you have to do. And what we found was customers would come back to us. We'd have to then figure out ways of servicing that need because the business will say it's easier for you to do it than it is for us. So you get this compound effect, this, the more you do, the more you have to do, the more you do, the more you have to do. And if you follow that journey, we take on more and more responsibility for the business as we unlock more and more capability and revenue for them. And it's a natural progression. We don't have to necessarily try too hard to solve that problem. We just need to satisfy the needs of what consumers are asking us to do. And we've had to build the platform in order to be able to respond to that. And that's been really difficult to achieve, both in terms of building the platform, but also all the data and information that you need to be able to satisfy a need of a consumer when they can ask you most ridiculous things and the most crazy things. So, I think that the journey for AI in our world particularly, and there are many use cases for it, but in our world, it's satisfying increasingly more and more the need of the consumer, such that their interaction with the business is quick, efficient, accurate, timely, and precise. And in that process, will help humans along the way to be able to develop better relationships with their consumers. If you follow that path, it fulfills itself naturally, which is what we're seeing.
Building on it, as a final question from my side, you've of course, as you mentioned, worked in automotive for a number of years, founded a number of different companies, which leads me to the question of, if you would speak to someone who is currently founding an automotive company in the marketing, sales, distribution area, from your wealth of experience, what would be your top 3 recommendation to this individual to make their organization a success?
As an automotive business?
Yeah, as a younger automotive company.
Yeah, I think some people would say, don't do it.
It's not an option.
No, just kidding. It's a fascinating industry. I meet the most passionate people who run these businesses. They really deeply care about the quality of what they deliver. And there's a few that don't, but broadly speaking, I meet people, and if any of our customers are listening today, they'll know who they are. They're really passionate about this. And I think the key to this sort of industry is, and particularly as it moves forward, is a degree of diversification. It used to be sort of, you'd start a Ford business, let's say, as a franchise, and you think you're set for life. The world is changing so rapidly now that I think you've got to be mindful that you're building your own brand. And it's not unreasonable to think that your consumers who are protective of the brand, because there's also this confusion, isn't there? Like, you go to a Ford business, but it might be owned by a franchisee, but the consumer doesn't necessarily know that. And this sort of whole who owns the customer thing has been in the industry as a problem for a long time. But the truth is that if I were building an automotive business now, I'd focus heavily on automation, firstly. Secondly, I think I'd focus on building the brand of that business, such that you could pivot to be a retailer of any product or service, frankly. And I think the really passionate ones that are in this sort of industry, they understand that the brand is really important and the presentation of the brand is really important, because you don't know in 5 years what you'd be selling. Who knows?
No, thank you so much, Carl. I really appreciate your time and insights.
No problem.